So, for those of you who don't know, I run a company called KGM Theatrical. We are general managers for Broadway, Off-Broadway, and touring productions. And a question I often get is just what does a general manager do? And today I'm going to answer that, but I think the best way to answer that is to diagram a typical org chart for a Broadway show so you can see the different layers of management within a Broadway show and how the general manager slots into that. Now, just a quick caveat. I think some shows may weight some of these roles a little bit differently, so I know there could be some quibbles here, but just understand this is more average than across the board. So before I explain what a general manager does, let's start with the top of the org chart, and that's going to be your producer. Now, if we think of a typical Broadway show or off-Broadway show like any other startup, your producer is the CEO of the entity. And they really have two job functions. So number one, they have to option the rights to a project. And number two, they have to secure the funding. So that is your CEO. Let's talk about who reports into the CEO on a Broadway show. So most obviously, we have our author group, who are responsible for writing the show. You then have your director, who is responsible for the creative vision of the show. And you could say, we'll just go down this org chart for a second here, that reporting into the director are the designers, the casting director, who's really reporting into both the director and the authors. Now keep in mind, all of these people ultimately report back into that producer. But this is just the layers of management. Now that is on your creative side, but right over here, also reporting directly into the producer is your general manager. And your general manager also oversees a lot on a production, but they have three core job functions, three core elements of the show that they oversee. So number one is the budget. Oftentimes the first thing a general manager does for a producer is create the overall budget for the show. They also handle all contracts and negotiations. And finally, they own the P&L for the show. So ultimately, business decisions that can be made to improve the P&L are going to fall under the general manager's jurisdiction. There's a lot of different levers that a general manager has to pull on to try to improve the P&L. We can talk about those in another video, but they include things like trying to increase revenue or trying to reduce costs. But ultimately, trying to get that P&L to look as good as possible so that the show can run for as long as possible. That's the core function of the general manager during the running of a show. Now, let's talk about who reports into the general manager. So most obviously, we have your company manager. And this is the person who, or team of people, who executes on the budget. They run payroll. And they liaise between everything that happens at the theater and the general manager. Next, reporting into the general manager is your stage manager. So often during the running of a show, I am talking to the stage manager on a weekly, if not daily basis. So this stage manager is going to report into the general manager. Now, what makes the job of a stage manager difficult is that they also have to report back into the director. Because the stage manager, in addition to being in charge of everything that's happening backstage at the theater, is also in charge of maintaining the director's creative vision for the show when the director is not there. And then, finally, reporting into the general manager is your production manager. Sometimes also called a technical director, and they're in charge of all of the technical elements of the show and staffing the technical positions on the show. Not the design positions per se, but the technical positions on the show. So let's just zoom this back out so you can get a full picture here. So again, your producer is the CEO of the entity. You have a director and author group who are in charge of the creative vision for the project. And then your general manager, who's really in charge of all business aspects of your production. I just want to say there are a lot of other people who work very hard on a Broadway show that I haven't even talked about today. Your advertising agency, your wardrobe supervisor, your hair supervisor. This is just the basic overview of the layers of management on a typical Broadway or off-Broadway show. I'll be reviewing some of those other job functions in a future video. The goal of this channel is really to demystify questions you may have about how to produce and run a Broadway or off-Broadway show. So if you have questions, please let me know in the comments below. I want to be responding to them, creating videos based on questions that you have. So go ahead, drop me a note in the comments. Let me know what I can demystify for you. But I hope as a practical overview of the management layers of a Broadway show that this was helpful. Thanks so much. Take care.